it's exceptionally hard on business, including mine, but we have to stay focused and stay positive and focus on the things that we can control and the things that we can do rather than on the negative. And that's going to see us in good stead. I think, the humility of this situation and the way that it's humbled us, it's going to flow into creative projects in the future. And I really do believe that the city will come back stronger.
Today on Dirty Linen, I'm chatting to Ben Shewry from Attica. Funnily enough, I've spent quite a bit of time with Ben over the past 6 months, socially distanced, of course. We've been running the Attica Soup project together, which I'm sure we can cover in this chat. But Ben, honestly, I know you haven't listened to one episode of my podcast, so the only way to get you to associate with it at all was to get you on it. So you've been hassling me for so long, I finally let you come on for a chat. Thank you.
Is that true? Have I been hassling you?
Yeah, every week it's like...
Isn't this the first time I've actually heard of this podcast? I think it might be.
Yeah, every time I say I do a podcast or, guess I got on the podcast this week, you're really busy, you're just blanking me doing something else. So that's fine.
I was doing a pot of soup or something like that probably, or chopping something or doing dishes.
Possibly. I think I'm usually doing the dishes, aren't I? But anyway. Lately, so since I've been trolled so badly by you that I finally found the dish pit.
Well, if you want anybody listening out there, if you want people to do dishes, the pathway to getting people to do dishes is just to bully them constantly. That's my blanket rule for getting people to do dishes.
Yeah, I've certainly learned a lot about people management by observing you, Ben. So we'll definitely get onto that as well. But first of all, I wanted to thank you for putting on a party for Melbourne on the weekend. It was a pretty crazy plan, but I thought it was really cool. Do you want to tell people what it was?
Yeah, sure. I guess in the very first lockdown, whenever that was it in March? I think it was in March. Or April. I had this idea about how cool it would be to organize. People were a bit down, and I thought it would be really cool to organize, a virtual party at home for people to get on their nice clothes, decorate their living rooms like discos and nightclubs, and I would provide the information on how to do that, make some party recipes, and then tune into an amazing live performance of one of my favourite bands of all time, the Avalanches, who happen to be a Melbourne group. And that was just a thought that I had when I was walking home after a really long shift at Attica. And I immediately acted on it. The beauty of this time has been the immediacy of people, and everybody's diaries are open. And I didn't know Robbie and Tony from the Avalanches at that point, and I just sent them a message and said, "Hey, would you entertain this crazy idea?" And they did entertain it, and Robbie and I ended up meeting up and becoming close friends actually through it. But they had already agreed to perform with the NASA, the International Space Orchestra. So at that point in time, their schedule was full, and I guess fast forward 4 months, and we're in lockdown again, and the guys came back to me and said, "Would you still be up for doing that idea? And let's flesh it out." And and it happened, and 5,000 households, I guess, in Melbourne and around the world tuned in, and we had a party, and it was really fun.
It was really fun. And I think, when you set the date, it was going to be the end of stage 4 lockdown. And it was, I guess a celebration that we'd got through it and we're coming out the other side. As it's turned out, the date has been pushed back, and Melbourne is still heavily restricted in what we can do. So I think there was still a feeling, I think, of celebration just, from when I tuned in and just watching people be part of it on social media. I think people really felt like there was something to celebrate about just getting to where we've got to and sticking with it, and just how challenging it's been for so many people. It was definitely a feeling of relief and release and togetherness, and it really felt like there was something about Melbourne that was really worth celebrating in that event and on that night.
Well, that's right. And Robbie and Tony and myself, Kylie, who works here with me and is my partner, as you know. We just want to reinforce this idea that life doesn't stop today because COVID has arrived, and my attitude just generally more broadly to life and to life at all points in time, but especially during hard times, is that I don't want to look back at the end of my life and have this period where I didn't do anything, or I didn't try to at least enjoy it, because life's so short, and to pass up an opportunity to sort of live and in a real way, if you can, I think it's a great shame. And that was kind of really, from my perspective, that was what I was trying to get across to people, that you know we're all going through this. Let's just try to get through it the best way possible.
I mean, you do seem to always be trying something new and to be relentlessly positive and creative. Not everyone is able to muster that positivity at the moment. Why do you think you're able to?
I think it's probably comes from my upbringing and where I come from. I talk about my privilege quite often, and my privilege was not a financial privilege, but it was a privilege of watching my parents, Kay and Rob, do this incredibly hard graft on their small business, which is a farm. My mum had a career and was a school principal and full-time teacher, as well as raising three children with my dad, and they really struggled. It was very, very difficult financially for them, and I just sort of bore witness to that my entire childhood. But at the same time, they were never complaining about it, and it never felt like a negative thing that it was such a struggle and such a graft. And so that's probably like where that comes from. I think also having had a few harder times myself, I think they humble you. And we were talking the other day, Dani, and I think it just depends on the context of everything. How hard is it really? I know people that have been through horror in their lives, and so for me, I try to keep a bit of perspective on this. We've had staff here whose family have fled, persecution in North Korea, and in the process have lost half their family, murdered by people trying to get out of the country, get to South Korea. We've had people that have lived through genocide. I know your dad, for example, survived the Holocaust. And so for me, I try to keep those stories that I know from people that I know in mind when I'm thinking about how bad it is right now, because I think perspective is a really important thing, and it can always be a lot worse. I think during this time, you could be like, people's reactions and people's attitude and some people's behavior, it can be surprising, but I'm doing my best not to judge. I'm always remembering that that everybody's circumstance is different, and I come from this place of privilege, and my privilege is that I had this childhood which was incredibly positive, and that is of intrinsic value to me.
Yeah. I guess
the other side too is in the business sense, Dani, is that in terms of like Attica, restaurants are closed in Melbourne right now, for the dining rooms are closed. But the opinion that I take is that it still could be worse. At least we can do takeaway and delivery, whereas some businesses, the airlines, a lot of hotels, hairdressers, my personal trainer, they can't do anything right now. So I still have this way to make a living. It's not ideal, but I still have this. And then secondary, what I've learned across 15 years that I've run Attica, but in particular the last 5 years that I've owned Attica, is that problems, are the definition of business. And so this, to me, is just another problem to overcome in the mix of many other problems that you just face in business. And I think it's it's really important in a time like this and really beneficial. I'm lucky that I've got a lot of really good people around me, so we can face these problems together and overcome it. And that's just how I view this time, I suppose.
Well, sure, business it is defined by the problems that beset it, but this is a pretty big one. I reckon there might be people who imagine that because you run this world famous restaurant, that it's hasn't been that hard. Like, don't you just put out a little post on Instagram and suddenly sales
Yeah,
flood in and you could sell anything
yeah.
you want? Like, I mean, has it been hard?
Yeah, it's no sweet as it's real easy. Yeah, it's just a walk in the cake and walk in the park. And look, I just spent all last week watching Netflix and laying in bed. It was great. All the money just rolled in. um, well, I think those people, who would have that perspective, I think personally, sometimes that having that perspective, i.e., like looking at what somebody else has built, and that's what I've done. I've built this. It's nothing that was given to me here. Um, you know, um, it excuses them to basically move forward themselves. There's this great saying, and I love this. I kind of live by it, and it's that you could be great today, but instead you choose tomorrow, and that's exactly how I'm living in this moment, but it's generally how I try to live. And the idea is that, today is to be absolutely maximized. And, like you know, you wipe, you wipe down your kitchen bench at the end of the day, with the rag, and it's by the time you've wiped it all down, it's sort of sopping wet, and you wring out, that water from it every day. I wring out every ounce of what I can out of this place and out of myself, and that's because it's not a time to be sitting back and saying, well, look at what somebody else has got. I mean, I'm not competitive with other people anyway. I'm running my own race. Like I think that I really admire other people's businesses and love going there, but I never look at other people's businesses and think, oh, I wish I had that or I wish I'd built that. In terms of like, Attica being this well-known place, that's true. But to counter that, 30%, around 30% of our customers were international visitors. We were operating a menu that's $330 per person. It was 5 days only. We were cooking fine dining, and we had to flip that into completely new, but two new businesses actually, and we just did that through incredibly hard work. And I suppose I think this time more than any other time, if you don't have your finger on it, and if you're not completely engaged with your business, and you're not actually there at the coalface with your staff as well, then you can't really expect much to happen.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear you say that thing about wringing out the rag, because I think you have really wrung out what Attica was. Like, it's that restaurant is not there right now, and what you have created, a restaurant that's doing garlic bread and Pavingtons and obsessing over shaving apples, and I don't know, like there's a lot of crazy stuff, running a soup kitchen. It's a very different place, and I think to have that that mindset that you can just let that go to some extent and do something that's so different is it's pretty, I don't know, it shows a great effort of will, or a great level of acceptance about what the situation is and what it's put in front of you to do.
Well, I think the more that you deny the situation, the more it holds you back. I think accepting things the way that they are and moving forward is just the only way for me. I had, as I've said many times, the very first day that I realised that COVID was coming, we're going to have to close the dining room. I thought that I would lose my business, like everybody has, thought that they would lose their business, um, and so that was that one day that allowed that sort of self doubt, and then the next day, I went to work, and I've consistently worked between 80 and 100 hours or more through COVID, because that's what's been necessary to for my business to survive so far. I think, like, Attica has never really like been about, to me, what its product or what it did. It's always been like a bigger thing to me. It's been about, it's not the four walls, it's not the building, it's not the location of Ripponlea even. It's really about this group of people, and what you can do, when you have the right group of people. And our group of people has, certain attributes that allow us to do this work now as well, because all of our staff have had to really change their roles as well, their jobs. We have highly qualified sommeliers and front of house staff driving their cars and delivering food to people's houses, and we have chefs that used to make small amounts of food, making high volumes and still needing it to be at the same level. Everybody's been on this really big learning curve, and we're really serious about recruitment here. We hire for attitude mostly, and intelligence and curiosity, but things like kindness and optimism, empathy, self-awareness, integrity, those are all coming before what skills do you actually have, because I think it's easy to be part of a winning team or have a winning mentality when everything's going your way and you won awards, or you're full every night. But you'll be judged by, and you should be judged, I think, as a team by how you react when the chips are down and your back's against the wall. And because we hired for character first and foremost and attitude, these people that work here have done an exceptional job so far, and that's carrying us through as well. So all I have to do is make sure that my habits are positive and professional. And I ask myself every day whether I'm making pro moves, and I focus on the process. My opinion is that amateurs focus on outcomes. I literally focus on the process. So understanding the process is super important to me and to us, because, if I want to come back to a successful outcome again and again and again, and that's what any, elite business needs to do, then I have to have the system in place that allows that, and that allows that you to get these results that we get consistently at the level that you desire. So it's about building a system. We've built a new system here, but we already had a system of excellence in place, if you like, and everybody here buys into that, and it's been amazing to be with this group of people through this, and to see each other have each other's backs every day, and then more broadly as well, to see the way that the community has reacted. I think in that first week, I think we had 4 days to turn Attica, which was a fine dining restaurant, into Attica at Home, which was a food delivery service, and the Attica Bake Shop, which was a cake shop, for a few days. I think we had about 4 days, and there was this moment where Kylie Stadden, who's operations manager here, and I had sort of planned these things, or were planning these things, and we sort of wondered, will anybody actually care? It was this sort of sad moment where, like, we felt like, well, and I don't ever think like this, because the work that you do in community, the work you do for other people, you should never seek to get a return from it. It's just the best way to live. If you do things for people and don't expect anything in return, then you're never disappointed. So I definitely take that approach. And I thought, well, Kylie vocalized it, said, over the years, we've done so much for other people, but will anybody come to us in our time of need? We need people now, and we had weeks rather than months, and people did, and then that first week and since, the feedback from people has just been so incredible. And there were people coming to that bake shop in that first week who had their last pay packet then been made redundant, or they'd been stood down, and they said, look, this is my last salary, but I wanted to come here and spend, $8 on a piece of cheesecake. And I was just, that stuff just is mind-boggling. When you hear that from people, when people care about your business and what it stands for, it's incredibly humbling. And I've carried that with me this entire time. We have this amazing wall here in the kitchen. And when we get letters from people, we get letters from, like handwritten letters and beautiful emails and cards and art, works of art and gifts and all kinds of things get sent here every week. And we stick them up on this wall, and this entire wall of the kitchen now is covered with these messages. And we look at it and read them, and it carries us, We keep those people in mind. We keep our customers in mind constantly. Because this is like, there's no kind of poor me here. It's unfortunate what's happened, but I've accepted what's happened, and it's not somebody else's problem to deal with. It's my problem. This is my business, and I take responsibility for it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I've spent quite a bit of time at Attica through COVID, and I haven't seen 1 ounce of pity leaking out anywhere. It just has not been a factor at all. So Ben, you've sort of explained how you lead your business, and it's through the way that you recruit and the qualities that you value in other people and display in yourself. But I know a lot of people in the broader industry look to you as a leader. How do you take that role? How do you think about that role? And do you feel like you're a leader? And if so, how do you display that leadership?
I appreciate that people, see that in me. It's a funny thing because I was a very, quiet kid. Quite shy, and I transitioned from primary school to high school. I really didn't feel like I had any leadership qualities at all. When I went to high school, I'd gone from a school with a roll of 7, and I went to a high school of 400, which in Australian terms is a very small high school, but that was a huge school to me. And moved from the country into a small country town. We'd moved from the back country to a small country town, and I was so anxious about being around that amount of people and being, in front of that amount of people that tears would well up in my eyes if I ever had to say anything in front of the class or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It was just totally foreign and benign to me. And I it's been a bit quieter, and I carried that. And then I was working at Government House in my early 20s in New Zealand, and they, for some reason, I was a sous chef, and they asked me to give a speech to a group of high school kids. It was a fair old group. It's about 150 of them in the banqueting hall at Government House. And what do I have to say? So I stood up in front of them, and they just were so like, it was typical, I suppose, teenagers of the time, and it was just like the quietest room. Like there wasn't a word. But they weren't engaged. It was just like a horrific experience, and and I was just like had no confidence with leading or communicating to people about how to lead, and then I even had a job where the chef who had somewhat of a hostile nature said had meetings with me to try to to pump me up, to say, come on, you've got to lead more like a man, boy, and he said, when somebody walks into the kitchen, they walk into the kitchen and they look around, and there could be 40 chefs in the kitchen, but they know who I am. I'm not over in the corner picking spinach. I'm saying that to him. He was basically saying that they would know who he was without even knowing who he was, just by his very presence. And I thought, oh man, give me a break. It's like so ridiculously arrogant. But I think with leadership, kind of actions speak louder than words always. So that's kind of what I live by. That a lot of the times my leadership would be through doing my work, letting my work do the talking. And if I have an issue with something that's going on in community, it's I would always target the broader issue, and not an individual. It comes back to being graceful. I would always want to lead in a graceful way and not criticize other people, because I think it's it's just really easy to jump down somebody's throat, especially online. And I always just try to step back off that and understand that, look, their situation is different to mine, their upbringing was different to mine, and I have different privileges than they do. So my understanding of something might be different, and so I don't like to condemn people if I can avoid it, especially not publicly. And I think here. It's just this, there's just been this sort of counterintuitive idea of how to run restaurants, and that's that they've been run on fear, and that the only way that you can reach this level is if people are really scared. I come from a different part of the world and a different mentality than that. I don't come from, that's a European mentality. That comes from France, that comes from England. I don't subscribe to that mentality. I've been subjected to that mentality. And early on, when I was younger, I also lived with that mentality, and I regret that, but really my true character is not to lead that way. My true character is that, you want to set a high example person, first and foremost, within yourself, and then teach other people how to come along with that. And the best ways that I was dealt with as a youngster in the kitchen, the ways that cut through to me in terms of my learning and when I wasn't reaching the level that was required, was when I was just very directly told that was not the level, that they were disappointed in me, and they didn't yell at me. They didn't have to call my mother a horrible name, which was, the technique of many people in the past. And those were the things that cut through to me the most, when there was a sense of disappointment, and I spoke to one of my young staff this morning, about something that he's developing for a menu, and it just wasn't good enough. Hasn't been served to anybody, but he served it to me. And I said, listen, you must think through the eyes of the customer, because when I ate that, I didn't think that you were thinking of me, and I didn't think that you were thinking of somebody else either. So you've got to be able to think of the person that's going to eat that. It's critical, it's crucial that you think of them. That's because what you've done really is, you've basically, delivered the technical aspect of what you were trying to achieve, but you haven't delivered any hospitality, So, the technical thing is, right, like, well, there's a soup that needs to be served, and you served it. So yes, you tick the box, but if it wasn't delicious, if it wasn't, good value, if it wasn't beautiful, if we didn't deliver it with the level of service and care, then there was no hospitality attached to that, So I guess my idea of leadership is, is just like, do it good, do it right, and but at the same time, let's not destroy people as we do it, not people in community, and not the environment, and definitely not the staff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so interesting that you would see something or be served something that wasn't up to scratch, but where I guess an old school way of doing it might be to turn that back on the person and talk and look at, where they had failed, but you're actually broadening it out and looking at the experience that they're delivering to somebody else. So it's like, that they haven't fulfilled the potential of what it is that they're trying to do. So it's a much gentler and more positive way of expressing disappointment or a lack in something that's being served.
No, they haven't lived up to, their potential either,
Yeah.
And I think it's, it's easy for chefs to not see customers. It's really, really easy because we don't see customers often, So, like, I think front of house have a much better grasp of, of hospitality generally, of making people feel great, whereas, cooks want people to like their food, but sometimes there's not that direct relationship with the customer or the guest, and so it, as I matured and got older and was more experienced and owned my own business, it was just very, very easy to see that direct correlation and how absolutely central that was to everything. And so I really tried to get the team to understand that, and in matters of discipline, we'll always come back to that, because that's ultimately all that matters. Did they love it? And did it make them happy? Because if it didn't, we've failed.
I dropped some food over to my mum and dad today, and they are still talking about the meal that I bought, the Father's Day meal I bought from Attica 10 days ago. They're still talking about it. And in fact, I think
Oh,
my
that's
mum's
so
writing you
nice.
a letter today. So maybe that
Wow.
can go
Oh
up on
my
the
God.
wall at
Wow,
some
that's so
point.
cool.
The, the
Well,
bad thing is
that's
that that I was going to tell you. The bad thing is, Ben, that she said that your cheesecake is better than mine.
well, I've been waiting for that bit of feedback, actually. That's very good to know. But I still think that we can't really be friends until you've tried my cheesecake. And I can't believe it's been all these months we've been making this cheesecake. You haven't tried. Just to give some context, people listening out there, Dani has a baked cheesecake recipe that she has published and holds in exceptionally high regard. In fact, she says it's the best baked cheesecake ever. I myself also sell a baked cheesecake, but I would never say it was the best. I would just say that it's an excellent cheesecake and let people be the judge. And it sounds like your mother, despite the blood ties, is on my side here, which is very positive and very good to hear today. It makes me very happy, Dani.
Oh, I'm glad
How
to
does it
make
make
you
How does it make
happy.
you feel, Dani? How does it make you feel though?
It makes me want your
Just loyal.
cheesecake.
Oh, there you go. Oh, see,
Uh,
that's the positive outlook. Yeah. See,
yeah.
I always loved it like when I was younger, before I started to create like my own thing, my own style, and walk to the beat of my own drum with cooking and with this business, I always loved the feeling that a meal that was like so much better than what I was capable of making gave me. Like always learnt so much more from that experience, from ever cooking anything well myself. There's certain moments in my career prior to starting at
Yeah.
Attica where it's just like a realization. Oh man, you've just got so far to go. You're so far down the road. This person is just leagues above your ability and your vision. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not saying
Well,
that's the case with the cheesecake, but it could be. It could be. That could be a
it
learning
could be.
experience for you, Dani.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of life ahead of me and a lot of cheesecakes yet to bake, so I don't mind if they get better. But it makes me think of something my dad used to say when I was a kid. He'd play squash every week with his friend Elliot, who's actually the man that introduced my parents many, many years ago in London. And Dad said, I can't remember how it came up. I think I might have asked who won, and Elliot always won. And I said to Dad, why do you like playing Elliot? And he said he liked playing Elliot because he was just that little bit better than Dad was. So he always had to keep trying and keep trying to beat him. So that always stayed with me.
Amazing.
Let's talk about the soup project that we've been doing, and let's do it without you being mean about my knife skills and how much mess I make and how
This
I
is a
really
podcast
didn't
about
know how to.
positivity, then, is it? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, that's it.
No, no.
No,
There's a
you
negative
can
free
say
zone.
you can say whatever you want.
Well, Dani,
I think it.
there's this line that I like, and it goes something to the effect of, when people tell you that you're wrong, they're almost always right. But when they continue to tell you how to fix it, they're almost always wrong. And so that could be this. That could be said of me and you in relation to knife skills or kitchen cleanliness. Am
Yeah.
I correct? Yeah. No.
Yeah, probably. No, I've learned so much actually. I mean, I've never spent much time in a professional kitchen, but it's been I've loved it actually. It's been so interesting. It's sometimes terrifying, and I really got to do something about your taste in music, but it's been good. But I wanted to talk about the mood, like the mood among the visa holders, because just for people who aren't aware, the Attica Soup Project makes soup, and now we give also groceries and hopefully enough food to get people through the week. We do it. We make soup on Wednesdays, we give it away on Thursdays, and we've been doing it I think since April. And I suppose when we started, I never thought it would be going this long, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be finishing anytime soon, or certainly that need is not diminishing. And I feel like early on, it was just something that sprang out of a sense of injustice, and it was as much about raising awareness of the issues around the government not looking after temporary visa holders as it was about giving them something to eat. But it's gone. At first it didn't feel like there was. I don't know. We knew there was a pandemic, but it didn't feel like the virus was everywhere. And then things got really so dark and heavy, didn't they? When we went, the numbers started going up and everything got into
Yeah.
other stages of lockdown. it's been emotional, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. It's definitely. I mean, firstly, it's just a great pleasure to do this with you. And all jokes aside, you are a fantastic help in the kitchen, and absolutely just a absolute trooper with organisation and the ordering and just everything that goes into this thing, along with Kylie. But it's just such an intense thing. I think either of us, for me, it was a reaction to the fact that we had to survive the pandemic. Attica had to just completely focus on itself, the company, and that's not our natural operating mode. We always have some social aspect going on, whether it's spoken or unspoken, mostly unspoken, um, and we weren't doing that at the time. And then you and I kind of came to the same conclusion at the same time, right? It was this need. I was very, very fearful for the Attica staff that were on visas, that are on visas. There's many of them. I think there's more than half of our labour force. And, if Attica failed, then these people would be out in the cold, literally, without any access to anything. And like you, that could happen in such a wealthy country as Australia, where these people were invited here, wanted here, were asked to come here to fulfil jobs that needed to be filled with skills that weren't available. And then all of a sudden, when things got a little tough, we're just going to write you out of any kind of financial help, and that just didn't speak to my Australian experience. That doesn't speak to me as a migrant who came here in 2002 and has just felt so wanted here and so welcome here. That didn't speak to my experience. It didn't sit well with me. And, I think we just both decided at the same time that we would do something about it, and in a small way. And, geez, yes, it is a really, week to week, it's an emotional thing. And I think even probably more lately, I've even just tried to keep, I've almost tried to keep a wall between that emotion and because it's almost too much sometimes, if I'm being honest. People are doing it tough, and these people don't have the privilege of a lot of people that were born here, because they don't have families to return to. They don't have mum and dad to move in with again. They don't have JobKeeper, the job saver, whatever it's called. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Seeker.
Job seeker. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of them are paying for their own health insurance. They have costs, and so it's been going on a really long time now. Some of the people that we cook for and give food to, must be just about 6 months now. Dani, is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is. And yeah, I mean, we have a lot of the same people that come each week, and I call a lot of them friends now. And yeah, they're good people in a really shit situation, and Australia should be better than that.
No, that's right. And these are senior people from all different levels, but there are a lot of very, very experienced hospitality people that are relying on this food, who have incredible skills and experiences, and have been assets to Australian companies. And it's just I think it was just bewildering to the both of us. But I'm sort of the belief that you just sort of get on and do what you can to help. And the philosophy of my company is that it's one that I look at other companies that aren't hospitality companies really for inspiration, and particularly to Patagonia, who is a Californian company run by Yvonne Chenoid, and I just think that I admire the most that in private companies that contribute to society in a meaningful way, whether it be through environmental causes or social causes, but in some way they work out a way of giving back to the community in a way that is that has integrity, and that are not doing it for public relations reasons. And I think and I think any company should do it because it's going to make them look good. And with the soup project, it's a really big commitment for you and me, Dani, isn't it? It's a really big commitment for my company. This is not a small thing. We are the ones that do this work, and willingly and gratefully. But we are the ones that get up, at 6 a.m. to make the soup on Wednesday, and then pretty much spend most of Thursday handing it out and packing grocery bags, and and there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm grateful for do it. But the thing about it is that if you start something and you make a commitment to people, you don't really stop unless you can't do it anymore or there's no longer a requirement.
Yeah.
And
you've
it's
talked a
very
lot
much
about privilege.
Well, that's right. There's I say the demand is not decreasing. It's very much a real thing, and people need it. And the support that you've been able to offer people with your frequent emails, your lists of jobs and support is just extraordinary. And I think without at risk of blowing your trumpet a little bit, but I think you're a great example of somebody who has, when faced, because maybe people listening out there don't understand about you, Dani, is that you've lost almost all of your work, your meaningful employment, but instead of complaining about it, you decided you'd do other things and lead positively. I think that's really inspiring. Certainly, it's been inspiring for me to watch you do that, and many others.
Ben, thanks. We'll edit that bit out, all right, Rob?
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. Can you give me that $50 note that you promised me?
Yeah, totally.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yep, it's coming. Ben, thank you. And let's finish by you talking a little bit about Melbourne and where you think Melbourne is at and how Melbourne's going to come out of this period. There are a lot of people that are, singing the death knell of Melbourne and saying that Melbourne is going to be many, many years in recovery. And of course, there are sadly many businesses that are perhaps not going to open. Some people are doing it so tough. Personally, I feel like the energy that's in Melbourne and our belief in our hospitality scene is going to buoy it, and it's going to be great. But what do you think?
No, I'm with you. I'm a glass half full type of person. Melbourne to me, is the greatest city in the world. That's one of the reasons why I moved here. I left a great city in Wellington, New Zealand, which is one of the best small cities in the world, and to come here, and I never left. And I've had the immense privilege as a chef to pretty much go everywhere and anywhere that I wanted in the world for work. And so I've seen a lot, and there's many great places around the world. But I always am reminded when I return here what a wonderful place is to live. And I think for me it's the energy and hospitality of the place. It's the way that people generally are exceptionally kind here. And I can never forget I think the first month that I was living here in 2002, and it was a really hot day. It was 40 or something, and I went down Beach Road to Black Rock, and I sat in the water, and there was thousands. It felt like thousands. I'm sure it was hundreds or thousands of people sitting in the water as well, and all up to their waist. And I looked around, and everybody was talking and yakking, and like a bunch of gannets or galahs or something, and I was like, holy cow, this is just amazing, and as I said earlier, I've always just felt so wanted here, and I really believe in the spirit of this place and in the creative energy of this place. And I think while this, I don't want to understate how hard it is on people. It's exceptionally hard on business, including mine. But we have to stay focused and stay positive and focus on the things that we can control and the things that we can do rather than on the negative. And that's going to see us in good stead. I think Melbourne is a real place, and I've always felt in my own business, that I was able to make thought and emotion visible in a way that seems natural and not artificial. And I think the humility of this situation and the way that it's humbled us, it's going to flow into creative projects in the future. And I really do believe that the city will come back stronger. and it may take some time. But I know that there's, I've been really encouraged by many people that I've witnessed fight and innovate and evolve, and I'm really just looking forward to seeing what some of those people do, and entrepreneurs will find ways to keep going, and that's what I'm choosing to focus on. And I think when we actually do get these restrictions eased in the future, that it's just going to feel amazing, and it's going to bring a lot of energy and joy and positivity to this place.
Yeah, I reckon you're right. Ben, thank you so much for coming along and having a chat, and I will see you tomorrow for soup.
Don't be late, Dani.
I won't. See ya.
Thanks, bye.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.